This is not a safe space. You have been warned.
Excuse me, it's ma'am. It is
Fucking degenerate.
Good morning, everyone. Virgo Triad here. It is July 18th, 2019. Happy Thursday to everyone. And before we get started, I want to let you guys know a couple things. Number one, I am definitely having some microphone issues, but a wonderful subscriber has come forward and has actually purchased me a very nice microphone, which is on its way. So you guys should not have to deal with any of the audio problems, or as some like to call it, ear rape, that you've had to deal with this week any further after Monday or Tuesday when that arrives. So I wanted to thank that party. You know who you are. It just so happens that that person had actually offered to purchase a very, very nice microphone the day before my audio decided to completely go wonky and make me sound like I'm in a tin can. So unfortunately, you're going to have to deal with it for a couple more days until that gets here, but it will be arriving shortly, and so we should not have to deal with you hearing the fan in the background anymore, or me sounding like I'm standing on the inside of a pipe. All right, so we're going to have an interesting little session today. It's probably going to be a little bit lengthy, but it's something that you guys have actually been requesting. And I found a wonderful article that was written by a person who posts as New African 77. Now, that, of course, is going to send you guys going, oh my gosh, it's a Moor. Yes, actually it is a Moor, but it's a Moor that has some sense. It's a Moor that actually has done enough research to understand exactly what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali was really saying, and he goes on to make some statements in this article that show what the truth is and speaks out against those that are lying on YouTube and actually trying to make claims that we know are completely false. And one of the major things that starts that whole Moorish Sovereign Citizen ideology kind of movement in these specific groups, and a lot of them are actually mentioned in this particular article, is the fact that they claim that America is Amexem, or that America is part of Africa, and as a result, that America belongs to them. They then go on to make crazy claims like the fact that they claim the United States has no jurisdiction over them, that all white people should be servants, slaves, or subjects to them, that they can lean anybody they want to, and they're the only ones who have the right to do that, that they can take over and squat in people's homes without repercussion, all kinds of crazy claims. So this video is largely going to be about debunking the group that call themselves the Moorish American Consulate. So for those of you who are not aware of who they are, here is a screenshot of their website and a screenshot of a couple of the different consulate YouTube channels that you can visit. And yes, one of those people is Sharon Tracy Gale Bay, as most of you know, and Noble L is another one. Taj Tariq, another one. And they are all part of this massive scam that this gentleman goes into talking about. So I think you guys are going to find this really interesting. It's, like I said, going to be a little bit lengthy, but it's worth it in the long run if you can hang in there. And if you can't, pause it, remember where you're at, and come back and listen to it later. Okay, guys, let's get started. This particular treatise is, in the author's opinion, a very critical aspect of the teachings that has become misunderstood and leads to the misleading misguiding of many pertaining to this Moorish movement. Such an ideology feeds the false notion that this land belongs to the Moors, and so Moors are not subject to the laws of the government here, something which is completely false. I have had several battles pertaining to this particular subject, some of which those whom I have debated with have become personal, and which have led many of my detractors from several offshoot groups to ridicule and alienate this sheik. I have offered challenges of $500 to bring in outside scholars to judge a debate between myself and my detractors, and none would accept. They would rather say, quote, "We are all right and you are wrong," end quote, rather than prove me wrong. In this particular treatise, we prove them wrong and challenge them to bring an argument to the contrary. Many in various Moor/Moorish circles have made the false assertion that Prophet Noble Drew Ali, who first introduced us to the name Amexem, was not only speaking about Africa, but also the Americas as well. Most of these misrepresentations of this reference are espoused by fringe Moorish groups like Great Seal, Moor's Order of the Round Table, Amexem Moor Empire, along with those loose bands of brothers and sisters who choose to call themselves Moors et al. And follow Euro-American sovereign citizen ideology. Conversely, this same belief is held by some members of the Moorish Science Temple of America and other types of temples, also a part of the fringe element, calling themselves the, quote, Moorish Holy Temple of Science, end quote. The fringe Moorish still don't know what a, quote, Mur is. Teach that North America is actually, quote, Northwest Amexem, end quote, and that South America is Southwest Amexem. They float an image around from Taj Tariq Bey's website, RV Bey Publications, which, in my opinion, is full of false information wrapped around a few kernels of truth, to which makes the false information appear real. Unfortunately, there are some in the MST of A who subscribe to this same faulty logic, and they also say that Amexem extends over to this region as well, because there is no river in West Africa that has black water, and so the prophet had to be speaking about the Rio de Negro in Brazil. I will in this note refute both of these claims. I will start with the easiest one first, and it is the claim made by the fringe Moorish groups. It is custom for these fringe Moorish groups to take the prophet's words and twist them up to suit their own meaning and definitions based on their own interpretations. Chapter 47, verse 2 of the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America says, quote, "Then came the word Ethiopia, which means the demarcation line of the dominion of Amexem, the first true and divine name of Africa, the dividing of the land between the Father and the Son," end quote. So here the prophet is making a clear distinction about where Amexem was geographically located, which is the place called Africa now. He explains the dominion and inhibition of a specific group of our ancestors and confined it strictly to Africa when he said at verse 4 of the same chapter that, quote, "The dominion of Cush, northeast and southeast Africa, and northwest and southwest was his father's dominion of Africa," end quote. In this we see Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the originator, and he who revealed this lost history to our people, confining the dominions of the Cushites and the Hamites strictly to Africa. In the 101s, or the Moorish American Questionnaire, the question is asked and answered. Number 32. Where is the Moroccan Empire? Northwest Amexem. Number 33. What is the modern name for Amexem? Africa. Now, anyone with common sense and a 5th grade reading comprehension will simply put the proverbial 2 plus 2 together and see that chapter 47, verse 2 matches up with the question of number 33, and conclude that Amexem is, in fact, Africa, according to the originator of the information. What we must note, however, is question number 32, which says, quote, where is the Moroccan Empire, end quote. To which the answer is given, quote, Northwest Amexem, end quote. Here we see that the prophet is specifically speaking about the northwestern portion of what we call Africa today, because history shows us that the Moroccan Empire was located at, you guessed it, Morocco. Now, according to the logic of these fringe Moor groups, America is called Al-Maroc. When asked for an etymological or historic reference to back up this claim, they never produce one. They try to justify their false claims of America being Northwest Amexem by giving America a pseudonym, a false name, namely Al-Maroc. What these brothers and sisters who hold on to this falsehood fail to realize is that there is not one historical reference of the Sultan of Morocco holding his seat of power here in the Americas. How can you blindly skip past this portion of reasoning? Our questionnaire asks and answers the question in this regard when it says, number 34, what is the title given to our ruler in Morocco? Sultan. What you, the reader, should note is that the above is the very next question and answer concurrent with our theme. In the prologue of the Moorish Holy Quran, it reads, quote, the industrious acts of the Muslims of the northwest and southwest Africa. These are the Moabites, Hamathites, Canaanites, who were driven out of the land of Canaan by Joshua and received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle in that portion of Egypt. In later years, they formed themselves kingdoms. These kingdoms are called to this day Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, Tripoli, etc. End quote. I hope I didn't mispronounce that too badly, guys. You know I'm mispronunciation girl. Are these people those who espouse the Amexem is America's too theory, saying that these kingdoms of Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, Tripoli, etc. was over here in the Americas? They have not, nor can they ever back up these claims. Such fictitious claims made by these people are persona non grata to any true researcher and seeker of facts. I have personally represented mounds of evidence that I have personally presented mounds of evidence that speaks to the establishment of the Moroccan Empire in North Africa, so there is no need to post that here, because what is being said should be evident, but like most things simple, people make them complicated, and thus note is produced because the fact is, common sense ain't so common. Now, reason and common sense avers that if the prophet is calling Africa by the name of Amexem specifically, then that is what he means. He means that Amexem is the true and divine name of Africa. It is obvious that he taught this to the early members of the MSTA as we find in one of the articles in the Moorish Guide published during the time the prophet walked with us in flesh, entitled, quote, Dedicated to the Sons of Man, end quote. We read, quote, Amexem, the land of our fathers, the land where the gods loved to dwell, the birthplace of the ancient Egypt land, where civilization just saw the light of day. Now, since man has left his first religion, he has been suffering from a complex disease which in some way takes hold of his passions and desires, end quote. Moorish Guide, December 1928, and you should see it on your screen. We know that Egypt land was born in northeast Africa, and this article proves that the prophet taught that Amexem was Africa. Again, after telling you it was in question 33, are these brothers and sisters who uphold these misrepresentations, or misinterpretations rather, going to be bold enough to produce the archaeological evidence that the Americas is in fact Africa, and that Egypt was on the side of the land and not over in the east, where, well, the archaeological evidence, pyramids, hypostyle halls, etc., excuse me, that are actually in Africa, predating anything here in America, which will back up their claims? Of course not. So it is obviously clear that every last one of these instances are speaking about the place we know as Africa today, and not the Americas. If this is not true, please present the prophet's words that say otherwise, being that it was he who brought us this very information. Some in the fringe groups, especially those called Moorish Holy Temple of Science et al., of whom I have had several debates with, have said and continue to say that chapter 47 proves that Amexem was the Americas. It says, the Moabites from the land of Moab, who received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle and inhabit northwest Africa. They were the founders and are the true possessors of the present Moroccan Empire, with their Canaanite, Hittite, and Amorite brethren, who sojourned from the land of Canaan, seeking new homes. Their dominion and inhibition extended from northeast and southwest Africa, across Great Atlantis, even into the present North, South, and Central America, and also Mexico and the Atlantis Islands, before the great earthquake which caused the Great Atlantic Ocean. Notice that it is simply speaking about the domain, or the dominion, places they would come to rule over of the Moabites, along with their Canaanite, Hittite, and Amorite brethren. It makes no mention of Amexem in this verse. It is speaking to the empire rule of these ancient Moors from northeast and southwest Africa, across Great Atlantis, even into the present North, South, and Central America, and also Mexico. Prophet Noble Drew Ali never claims in the slightest that this represents one land, just one empire of people ruling over various lands, that he never calls Amexem. Now, common sense and logic avers that if he wanted us to know the true and divine name of America, he would have said something like, quote, the Americas, whose true and divine name is Northwest and Southwest Amexem, end quote. Being that he did not say that, nor imply anything remotely similar to that, it is baffling to me that one cannot simply use their minds and see that when the prophet is speaking of the dominion of these ancient rulers, he is calling them by name and not by landmass. A fifth grader can see this if you were to present the same exact scenario to them. The kingdoms of North Africa became the later seat of our rule. What about those that say the earth was once one connected landmass, and this is what was meant by the prophet? The doctrine itself, as has been explained above first and foremost disproves this notion. Several simple answers must ask and answered if this is their logic. Being that the Earth was one landmass about 150 to 300 million years ago, not the past few thousand years. Can those who make this claim prove that the land was called / named Amexem, or even Africa for that matter? Can those who make this claim prove that there were modern-day humans walking the planet Earth at this time? Can they prove any records proving that if any human walked the earth at this time, they called themselves Moabites, Canaanites, etc.? If we are using the prophet's teaching as a reference, that the earthquake that caused the Atlantic Ocean is what caused the continents to separate and shift into their current positions on Earth? Opponents of logic state that the earthquake which caused the Atlantic Ocean that Prophet Noble Drew Ali spoke about caused the landmass to split into our current continents. If they can answer these questions with absolute facts, they ultimately win this debate. So we can clearly see, for those who have eyes, even if you are not a member of the MSTA, but come across this article just using the prophet's own words, it is quite easy to conclude that Amexem has absolutely no reference to the Americas. Another myth debunked. All right, here we go, guys. Is the Rio Negro a river in South America? Proof that this is, in fact, Africa? Unfortunately, there are some groups of the Moorish Science Temple of America that also believe this notion that somehow West Africa is referencing the Americas because of the Rio Negro, a river in South America of all places. This is mainly espoused by the group of the Moorish Science Temple of America, which styles itself as the Incorporated, a group that was founded in 1933 under the name of the Moorish Science Temple of America Incorporated. Through various debates with members of this group on social media, I have become aware of this claim, which can be found on their website. The prophet has informed us in the 101's questionnaire about the origin of the word Negro. He says, number 86, Negro, a name given to a river in West Africa by Moors because it contains black water. Many proponents of this fallacious claim fail to realize that the Portuguese, and not the Moors, gave this river this name. This alone refutes their point, along with the obvious. They point to the fact that the Negro River in Brazil just had to be what the prophet was referencing when he spoke about West Africa because it contains black water, and the Niger River in West Africa today does not contain black water. Are we to automatically assume that the Rio Negro is the river that the prophet was speaking about, all because it is called by the name Negro? Are these brothers in the temple group also beholding to the false notion that the Americas is in fact Africa? Unfortunately, they do. Several questions arise from the prophet's question and answer 86 that works against the proponents of this man's own words with their mere interpretations, and these questions are as follows. Why did the prophet say West Africa instead of South America if he really meant South America? How, in good common sense, can the Rio Negro, which is situated in South America, be the same as the river in West Africa? Which group of Moors named the river Rio Negro that is in Brazil if this is the river that the prophet was speaking of? Again, Prophet Noble Drew Ali is the author of this information, so we must closely analyze what he is saying to get to the solution of the discord between the varying interpretations. Although I am simply using the prophet's words directly, Let us then look to what the prophet had to say about the Niger River, and afterwards this researcher will prove in fact, by ascertaining other outside information, that will undoubtedly show and prove that the river that the prophet is speaking about in West Africa is not the Rio Negro in Brazil. Chapter 48, verse 8 says, quote, "The river Nile was dredged and made by the ancient pharaohs of Egypt in order to trade with the surrounding kingdoms. Also, the Niger River was dredged by the great pharaoh of Egypt in those ancient days for trade, and it extends eastward from the river Nile, westward across the great Atlantic. It was used for trade and transportation." End quote. Now we must understand that the real name of the questionnaire in part is quote-unquote Quran questions, which means that many of these questions in the questionnaire or the 101s are based on the information in the Quran of the MST of A. The prophet mentions the Niger by name, and so we can without doubt conclude that the river in West Africa that the prophet is speaking about in the questionnaire is in fact the Niger River. Simple deductive reasoning. When we take a look at the world map that was constructed in 450 BC, we see exactly what the prophet means when he says that it extends eastward from the river Nile westward. Notice, according to this ancient map, the river Nile and the Niger is one, just as the Prophet Noble Drew Ali said it was. During my social media debates, there are those of this group who have obstinately stated that the Niger River, Niger means black, was never a black water river, while never producing one reference to back up their claims. Is it a black water river today? This researcher admits that it is not such. However, in order to justify this researcher's claim and the prophet's own words, Negro, a name given to a river in West Africa by Moors because it contains black water, we must look into the historical records. To further prove that the Niger River was in fact viewed as a river that contained black water, we take you to one of many references on the subject entitled, quote, "The Romance of the Black River, the Story of the CMS Nigeria Mission by F. DeVille Walker, London, Church Missionary Society, 1930, end quote. Chapter 2, The Discovery of the Great Black River. While Crowther was a boy in his village home and a youth growing to manhood in Freetown, a new interest in West Africa was steadily growing in Great Britain. The interest in the Great Black River, the mighty Niger. For over 2,000 years, that river had been veiled in mystery. So early as the 5th century BC, heard how 5 young men had joined westward from Egypt and for many days crossed the desert until they came to a land of fruit trees. After passing through vast morasses, they reached a city, and by the city there flowed a great river running from west to east. It was not until the close of the 18th century that real interest began to be aroused in this statement. But in 1788, a company of men of letters and science formed the African Association with the express object of finding the Niger. In those days, geographers were of the opinion that either the Gambia or the Senegal must be the mouth of the great river of ancient tradition, and that Herodotus had been misinformed as to its flowing from west to east. First, notice that the prophet said the Niger River extended eastward, meaning that the river had a western origin, which is the exact same thing that the ancient historians said of the Niger when they said that it flowed from west to east. I pointed this out because there would be no need for the prophet to say that a river in West Africa extended eastward, meaning it extended from the west towards the east, if he is not in fact speaking about the Niger River? When he says the name Negro confirms from a river named by Moors. To continue in the above reference as a testimony to this fact, we read further. In 1795, a young Scottish surgeon, Mungo Park, started on the Great Quest. The association directed him to proceed up the Gambia and search for the Niger in the vast regions beyond. With amazing courage and determination, Park faced almost incredible difficulties. Riding on a horse and attended only by 2 African servants, he plunged into the dark continent. 2 fowling pieces and a brace of pistols were the only weapons for the whole party. Time after time they were attacked and plundered. Chiefs great and small demanded dashes, and one fellow compelled Park to give him the very coat off of his back. But the explorer's good temper and patience never failed, not even when the bigoted Ludamar Moors made him their prisoner, spat in his face, and subjected him to every indignity they could devise. So the evidence clearly shows us that the Moors of West Africa were still called such by the Europeans even in the 1700s, and that the river called by these European adventurers, that being the Niger, was to them the Great Black River. That undoubtedly proves that the river that the prophet Noble Drew Ali is speaking about is in fact the Niger River. When we do the etymological trace of the word Negro, we note Negro, member of a black-skinned race of Africa, 1550s from Spanish or Portuguese, Negro, black, from el negrum, meaning Latin. According to the etymology of the word Negro, it derives from the Latin word negrum, which is the nomen for Niger, Niger, I believe, which means black. Negro and Niger are the same exact word, just pronounced different. Would be Niger, I guess, actually. According to the certain consonant and vowel shifts of the word through the progression of Latin and the languages produced by it. We must now point out the fact that we do not see this appellation applied to our people by the Europeans until the 1550s, and then we notice that the etymology of the word Negro traces its nominal source back to the word Niger. This is a clear weight of evidence that I would love to see any brothers from the fringe offshoot Moor groups or my brethren from certain temples who espouse the same dispute. This then brings us to the origin of the name Negro and its relation to West Africa. All of the area below the Niger River was called Negro land by the Europeans. Ironic enough, Nubians believe that we should be using this name as opposed to Amexem or even Africa. The term Negro land was name given by racist Europeans and came to represent the Moors in sub-Saharan Africa, who were at the time called Negroes from the Spanish-Portuguese word negro, meaning black, and being that the Moors practically invented the Spanish language by combining elements of Arabic and Latin, then we prove that the prophet's claim to be true, that the name of said river was given the name Negro by Moors because it once contained black water. All right, we are at 35 minutes, and I'm not going to go any further, but what I am going to do is provide you with the link to this very educational WordPress site that New African 77 wrote. I hope that you enjoyed the little slideshow that went along with this. I do want to say that just because someone has a different religious belief, we have that right in America. We may not all agree with each other's religion, but we have to be aware of the fact that this country allows for freedom of religion. The fact that this party has done a lot of work in history and is able to see where the Moors actually started at and where they have come to now, and is saying, hey, this is what's real, this is what's not real, needs to be respected. I don't care whether or not you agree with the religion. What I care about is the fact that everyone acknowledges that there are real Moors and there are scam artists in this movement. We need to be respectful to those who see themselves as Moors for the purpose of their religious beliefs and for where their heritage is from, and we need to see the difference between that and the con artists that are making up lies and falsities. All right, everyone, I hope this helped you to better understand the history of the Amexem that Sharon Tracy Gale Bay talks about constantly, and the real truth about what Noble Drew Ali actually said as far as where Amexem was actually located. And there's no doubt about it after reading this, that Africa is where Noble Drew Ali was talking about, and America is not a part of Amexem or Africa. All right, everybody, have a wonderful day. Any questions, please put them in the comment section, or you can email me as always at virgotriad@protonmail.com. And for those of you that didn't get a chance to look at the actual video that I did a few days ago, the Virgo Triad Proton Mail the Virgo Triad Patreon account is now up, and the link will be in the description of this video, along with the link to this article. Thank you to New African 77 who wrote this. It's a wonderful piece of educational information. And everybody have a great day. Bye-bye.
That's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and share it around. I'm also very interested in what you have to say, so please leave your comments below. Until next time, later days.
You eat all my beans, nigga? Wow.
And if I end up on YouTube, I will personally send your ass.
I swallow cum. I swallow.